Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone. We're going to get started now. Firstly, I'd just like to thank you all for joining us for our second webinar of a four-part series titled Imperial Unlocked, where we will be going through all the different undergraduate courses that Imperial has to offer, and you'll hear from our lovely undergraduates who know their subjects really, really well and are very excited to inspire you guys. You'll also have the opportunity to ask any questions that you have about the courses, about Imperial, about university life, about the application process, or anything else that you would like to know. But before we begin, I would just like to tell you a little bit about STEM Muslims. We're a pretty new society at Imperial. This is only our third year running, but we are dedicated to creating a supportive and empowering environment for Muslims and underrepresented groups to pursue the fields of science and engineering and also beyond university as well. And we do this by holding lots of careers events, academic tutorials, and outreach initiatives, including STEM days for Year 12 science competitions and also webinars like today. So be sure to follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn to keep up with the kind of things that we do. And without any further delay, I'd like to hand it over to our first speaker. These are the panelists for the day who you all will hear from. And I'd like to hand it over to the first speaker, Dai, to talk about his course, Material Sciences and Engineering.
All right, Assalamu alaikum everyone. I'd like to thank you all for showing up. It's important to show interest. So my course is Material Science and Engineering. So I guess we'll start with the next slide, please. So what is material science? I always get asked this question because, I mean, ever since I've shown interest and ever since I started, what is material science? Well, I usually say it's the science of materials, and it is. I mean, if you simplify it a lot. But here's a quotation here's a quote from a material scientist in America. It says, material science is a syncretic, which means to combine discipline, hybridizing metallurgy, ceramics, solid state physics, and chemistry. It is the first example of a new academic discipline emerging by fusion rather than fission. If you could go to the previous slide. So basically, I just wanted to talk about what is material science, and then I'll explain why you should take it. So material science looks at the microstructure of materials and sees how that affects the material on the macro scale, on the large scale. So it combines performance, properties, structure, processing, and characterization. Now these are all, they all combine to make a material. So if you want certain properties, you have to consider the structure, the performance, and the processing. All of these come together. So if you go 2 slides ahead, should be. Now we go on to the why. See, if you want to be on the forefront of technology, technology can really only advance once you have better materials. See, that's why we have the Stone Age, as you can see from the left to the right. You got the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, Steel Age, so on and so forth. Right now, we're coming from the Silicon Age onto whatever age we are now. So the next slide, please. So I'm just going to show some other applications of materials. So materials are all around you. Right now, you're looking at a screen made of many, many materials. It could be LEDs, OLED, any LCD. See, these are all materials. So we've got applications in batteries, lithium ion. We got photochromic sunglasses. So when you go outside, they change color to block out the sun. I mean, that's kind of insane. Phones, you got so many components inside that matter so much in the camera, in the screen. The glass is made in a certain way that it won't shatter as easily. And it's also touchscreen. Cars, you have to consider what the chassis is made of. See, the reason why I use the Cybertruck chassis here because it has such sharp edges because it's made of a very rigid material. It's very stiff, but that's why it stays so hard and it won't bend as easily. Next slide, please. So we've got chargers here on the. If you look very closely, it says gallium nitride. I mean that's material as well. We got earbuds. They often talk about like what the diaphragm in the earbud is for like the quality and whatnot, like graphene and such. The motors, you also have to consider the materials inside that as well for maybe more efficient motors and such. Although of course you'll work with other engineers to better create whatever you like. Medical sutures, how do they dissolve in your body? They're made of a certain polymer that will degrade after a certain amount of time in your body under the conditions in your body to, into safe things that will, dissolve. Anyway, Invisalign, it's a shape memory, material. So once it goes in your mouth, the temperature in your mouth will make it turn, back into a solid, not solid, it's already a solid, but it will go back to the shape it's supposed to be to, shape your teeth in your mouth. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about the course without wasting any time. So this is year 1. We got maths and computing. So the maths and computing in year 1 and year 2, they are all to prepare you for the modules that you have to do, like performance, fundamentals of processing, structure, and properties. Now these are all parts of the tetrahedron of materials that we saw earlier. And then we've got engineering practice, which you'll have in year 1 and year 2, and it's kind of like group work, to work as a team, because in real life you'll be working as a team with other engineers. You all have different roles, and it just, every year they also change it up with what you have to do. Next slide, please. Now, year 2, the difference is that we don't see the processing, but we see characterization, which was the little center of the tetrahedron, because characterization is, how we identify the material. We also have engineering practice, but it's different from the first year. And then year 3, for the next slide, you'll see it's a bit overwhelming, but basically you just have a lot of options. You have the core modules on the left, and then the optional modules that you can pick 4 from on the right. And when you're picking the course, you can also choose to have it, on the next slide, you'll see that you can take materials science with nuclear engineering, or you can take material science with biomaterials and tissue engineering. Now, those will have extra core modules in year 3 and year 4, depending on if you do, BEng or MEng, but these are MEng. Anyway, so you'll have extra core modules, and they'll already be from the optional modules in the core module, but you can also pick 3 others in the optional modules. And that's all the course overview stuff. So we'll look at the next slide. So the application process, it's quite simple, I think. With Imperial, it was quite easy. I found it a lot, just as good as other unis. So you just send off your application, and then, if they like what they see in your personal statement, you'll go on to have a group an interview. Now that's either in person or online. I think depends on your location. So you'll have you'll have a group interview, and you'll have a personal interview with a lecturer, and they're really, really friendly. So don't worry, it's nothing to worry about. And then, it's pretty much like a conversation. So if you like material science, if you like what you see here, and you learn more about it, it will be so nice just to talk about what you like, and they're really friendly. And yeah, inshallah, after that you'll get an offer. Now we'll see in the next slide what the requirements are. So it's 3 A's or A star AA. Now it has to be maths and either chemistry or physics, and an A in another thing. And that's for Imperial. It depends on the uni. And then for IB, you'll have to do those things. I got an offer for 3 A's, but I know people have gotten offers for A star AA. And yeah, that's it. I hope you all enjoyed, and inshallah I made you more interested in materials.
Thank you so much, Guy. That was really insightful. Now I'd like to hand it over to Aiza to talk about geology.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aiza and I'm a first year geology student. Geology, if you go to the next slide, is like materials. It's an interdisciplinary subject. So it combines aspects of physics, chemistry, biology, geography, and maths. And it applies them to understand the processes that have shaped the earth as we know it today. By understanding those processes that provide us with all the natural resources that we depend on, we can ensure that those resources are used sustainably and responsibly so future generations can also have access to them. On the next slide, we have some key skills that are very useful for studying geology. Being a critical thinker and a problem solver are particularly important in geology because the data that we have from Earth history spans very long timescales of like millions and billions of years. So it's often incomplete, and that means that you have to fill in the gaps in the data and evaluate how accurate it is. And we also have to be able to take the concepts that we learn in lectures, whether that's identifying rocks, minerals, or fault lines, and you have to apply them in real life, as you can see in the picture. And often it's not as easy to see that structure in real life as it would be in your lecture. And lastly, in fieldwork is very much a team exercise, so having good communication and collaboration skills is also an asset. If we look at the next slide, in first year, this is like a lot of the modules that we study, and there's quite a broad range of topics, from ocean chemistry to the history of Earth, from like dinosaurs and ammonites to volcanoes and their products. We have a programming module, and for students who didn't take A-levels in maths or chemistry in first term, we have a catch-up module for each of those to get everyone on the same level for the rest of the degree. And on the next slide, we have some of the careers that you can get into from this degree. And as you can see, there's a really wide range that reflects the range of topics that we have in this degree. So there are people who can go into the mining sector. They say that in the next 20 years, we'll be mining 4 times all the copper that we have ever mined in the history of our planet. So mining sustainably is a very important part for the green energy transition. And we also have people working in engineering who decide where we should build buildings so that they are structurally sound. And lots of people go into the finance sector as well, because there are so many soft skills that you can learn from this degree that come in useful for risk assessment and other sort of financial sectors. And we also go into scientific research and environmental consultancy because of all the modules we take on climate and climate change. That's very useful in those sectors. So on the next slide, we have fieldwork. Fieldwork is a very essential part of this degree because that's the time where we can take everything that we've learned throughout the year and apply that in person, whether that's doing mapping projects or identifying minerals and the sort of processes that shape the landscape that surrounds us. And so geology is actually a really good subject if you want to travel the world, because there is so much to see and it can take you anywhere and everywhere. So on the next slide, to summarize the reasons that you should take geology, if you're curious about the natural world and you want to make a difference to support our planet and ensure that the resources we have today are available for future generations, and you have an interest in traveling and exploring the world, then geology could be the perfect subject for you. And then lastly, we can talk about the application process. Just like many other subjects, the applications for the next academic year close at the end of January at the latest. There isn't an entrance exam, and any shortlisted applicants come in for an interview. That's if you're a home student, and it's online if you're international. And the minimum entry requirement is AAA, with at least 2 of those A's being in the following subjects that I discussed earlier. It's quite a large range, so you can come with any selection of these subjects. And yes, I hope if you're interested in geology that this gave you a better look at what to expect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aiza. That was really insightful. Just a reminder to everyone listening, if you do have any questions that you want to ask, please do drop them in the chat. Don't be shy. And at the end, we will have a Q&A session where you can have all your questions answered, inshallah. Now I'd like to move on and hand it over to Kowsar, who will be talking about physics.
Assalamu alaikum, guys. I'm Kowsar, second year physics student at Imperial. And yeah, I'd like to first ask or explain what is physics. Physics, actually at Imperial, has a lot of focus on the, thank you, has a lot of focus on the minute. So we look at the subatomic level, and also we zoom out onto planets and things like that. And there's different modules in all these kind of things, and these include classical mechanics, electromagnetism, quantum mechanics, which is quite fun, and cosmology. And what skills do you gain as a physicist, especially from Imperial, you build your mathematical and analytical thinking skills, and that's really attractive to a lot of employers. You also develop a lot of problem solving and creativity, not in an artsy kind of way, but in an important way. You will learn to program and analyze data and look at things from different perspectives, and most of all, resilience and just adapting to things. And yeah, so physics graduates, especially at Imperial, they are quite sought after in areas like finance, tech, engineering, and consulting. Next slide, please. And so the application process, if you can, like with all other courses at Imperial, apply by the deadline. I wouldn't recommend it, but and the entire process is just submitting your application and then taking a test, which I think is a new test. I don't have to do it, but looking at the questions, they are quite standard questions in that they expect you to use, skills from A-level maths, no interview, if that's not your kind of thing. And yep, the minimum entry requirement is double A star A, although I think that might vary for contextual offers and so on. And this includes an A in physics and higher, so A star in maths. And then on the next slide. And so we don't take too many courses for physics at Imperial. The practical physics course, I think, runs until for term 1 and term 2, and these labs are, I think, similar to the required practicals that you do at A-level for physics. So if you can imagine, like, you measuring G using the time period of a pendulum and so on. And there's the mechanics and relativity course, which is split up into 2 parts. So you do the mechanics bit first, and so as you can imagine, it's quite similar to the mechanics in at A-level. So measuring velocities and modeling accelerations and forces and so on. The different courses that you probably haven't encountered before are oscillation and waves, and so you're using the A-level math skills and use that to explain waves. So what you did qualitatively at A-level is explain using like derivatives and so on. VFEM there stands for vector fields and electromagnetism. So I think I mentioned that as one of the core topics in physics. And yeah, you develop a lot of math skills first within these courses, and then you can apply that to physics. And then the last module, or year 1 at least, is statistics or measurement. I say last because you do that in term 2, and you do that in term 3, and that's the only module you do after your exams. And that contains a big group project and also learning about statistics, which is quite fun. And you can pick one of 2 modules in first year, mathematical methods. And so this is the most mathsy of the physics courses. And by that, I mean, it's quite, it's definitely something that a math student would take. And then there's advanced electronics, which is 100% coursework, and it's building on your lab skills. For the core modules, they're typically 70% exam and then 30% coursework, or 80% exam and then 20% coursework. So that average is about 75% exam and 25% coursework. The courseworks are typically designed for you to get 100% in. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, especially inshallah if you do get an offer. And with the exams, we do a quite funny thing where you don't really get your mark back for exams, and so you'd expect just to get a mark back for the module overall. And on the next slide. Yeah, so a couple things about the course. I mentioned a bit before about the courses where the specific modules where you build up a lot of math skills before you actually dive straight into physics. And as you can imagine, it's a lot more mathsy than A-level physics. My A-level maths teacher at sixth form said that, and this stuck with me. If you really enjoy maths at A-level, you probably really enjoy a physics degree. So there's none of that, 5-6 markers, explaining what is the electro, some effect. You do the maths to show that effect. And as I mentioned before, there's a range of assessment methods, and this is spread out throughout the year. So as a physics student, you'd expect to, every 2 weeks maybe have something due. And I think it's quite nice, it takes the pressure off exams. So if you don't do too well in an exam, or you feel that you haven't done too well in an exam, you could always try and do that much better in the coursework. And interesting thing is we have a couple presentations. I think I did about 4 in first year, and you just work with your partners. And if you're stressed about that, we do a kind of moderation thing where if you can reward a member of your group by giving them a multiplier, so like they can get 1.5 times the grade you get overall, but also you can speak to your tutors and say that somebody isn't pulling their weight, and so it's fair in that kind of regard. And yeah, there are little end of term quizzes that you can do, like really simple quizzes, and it's nothing to do with academics at all, but like how you feel, and like asking, it's kind of like feedback on teaching, and these actually do boost your grade, but like by 0.5%. And yeah, I want to stress that there are like coding labs at the beginning of the year, and during those coding labs you just kind of learn Python, and it's just enough Python to produce plots and just do a simple data analysis, and you definitely don't need further maths. But that's about all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Kowsar. That was really interesting. Now I'd like to move on to chemistry by Atshaam.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Alright. My name's Atshaam, second year chemistry student at Imperial, and we're going to be talking about chemistry, as you can see. So chemistry is just like the study of matter, right? Yeah, that's right. It's just like the study of matter on an atomic level. It's more theoretical than, I'd say, like materials and chemistry, which I think is next. Sorry to spoil it, but it's a lot more theoretical, and it's really looking at the atomic level. So yeah, next slide. So years 1 and 2. By the way, yeah, my thing, I've done it like, I haven't really looked too much overall about what chemistry is. I've just gone into the course and then done an interview. So if you have any more questions about like chemistry overall, then feel free. But years 1 and 2 are just like the same for any chemistry degree that you choose. No matter if you do it like with molecular physics or medicinal chemistry or with a language. And yeah, year 1 is a lot of learning the fundamentals of organic, inorganic, and physical chemistry. In particular, term 1. Personally, if I like term 1, I was just learning like doing a physics degree, and a lot of people say the same thing because you're learning the kind of concepts behind spectroscopy in particular, and structure and bonding and orbitals, which involves quantum mechanics. So I don't think we go into as much detail as physics, but you do kind of get introduced to quantum mechanics, which I didn't personally think I was going to be learning at uni in chemistry, but I kind of enjoyed it a little bit. And then you also do learn kind of more fundamentals in organic as well. And then second term in year 1 is where you do a lot more kind of chemistry, I feel like, where you're doing like kinetics and thermodynamics, organic chemistry with a lot of reaction mechanisms, way more complex than A level, I'll say, but we'll get there. And then you also do look at the periodic table in a lot more detail as well. And then third term in year 1 is just literally labs, and that's like labs, so it's a lot more chill. No exams, no lectures. Your exams are during January and May, I think. Yeah, May. And then yeah, third term is just all labs. And throughout the year you do have labs as well. As you can see, top right, got one lab called Chemical Kitchen, which is literally just cooking. I didn't think I'd be doing this in chemistry as well, but it's just cooking. As you can see, you got orange, some strawberries, stuff like that. That was mine. In the bottom right, got a lab from third term. I think it was a synthesis lab. Got some distillation apparatus here. I think in this one in particular, what happened was one of the pipes was on a hot plate, and then it melted through, and there was water leaking everywhere. This one wasn't mine, it was my friend's, just so you know. But this is just to let you know that like labs, they're not too like serious because they don't assess you on your actual like physical competency. It's more about the lab report, making sure you understand the theory behind what you're doing. So just to let you know about labs. And then the bottom left, this is what I was talking about before about quantum mechanics being sort of prevalent in first term because it just forms the foundations of all the orbitals. Yeah, next slide, please. Oh wait, year two. I didn't even talk about year two. Year two. So year one, you're basically just learning like foundations, and then year two, you build upon them. So for example, in first term in year two, you do some more organic, kind of building upon the organic in year one, but a bit more complex. You do some more kind of quantum, do some molecular orbital theory, which is just used to like describe bonding in different molecules. You do some group theory, which is like looking at symmetry, which is a bit interesting. Then you do some photochemistry as well, and then you just learn more about NMR and also about a technique called EPR. And then in term two, year two is like the most intense term in the whole degree. Year two itself is the hardest degree as well. Not to scare you, just like letting you know what to expect. But year two, most intense year, especially term two, mainly because you have like so many modules and lectures, but then labs as well alongside that. But what you're learning about is a bit more thermodynamics. You continue about learning more about spectroscopy and different characterization techniques. Look at different things in inorganic, looking at like organometallic complexes, which I'll talk a bit more about later, I think. And then, yeah, next slide. So years 3 and 4, obviously I've not been through these years yet, only year 2, so I don't know too much, but what I do know is years 3 and 4 is where the course differentiates from if you're doing a BSc or MSci. And this is where you get more choice in your modules. In the first 2 years, the only choice you have is with your ancillary subject. So yeah, here you have a choice of, I think it's 5 modules for terms 1 and 2. And then, yeah, so this means that you can kind of tailor your selections, whether you like organic, whether you like inorganic or physical, I think. And then if you're doing like molecular physics and medchem, it just means that you have some kind of compulsory modules, I think. Yeah, and if you're doing a BSc in year 3, that's where you do your research project, and it'll be kind of smaller than if you were to do an MSci, it would only last 1 term. If you're on a 4-year MSci, then you do during year 3 just teaching labs throughout the whole year, and then year 4 you do your whole project. Yeah, and apparently it's a lower workload, allegedly. I can't speak for it myself. Next slide, please. All right. This is like the application process and entry requirements. So the minimum requirements says on the website, 3 A's, and it must be chemistry and maths. I think it said there's a preference if your third A level was like physics, or I think it said economics as well, or further maths as well. I don't know why it's economics, but yeah, they're the requirements. I think if you think about doing 4 A levels, I think most people, especially home students, they didn't do 4 A levels. I feel like the international students, they did more the 4 A levels. But yeah, I know a lot of people that just did 3 A levels, did 3 A's and got in. So I think if you meet the 3 A's, then definitely think of applying. Personal statement, as you can see in the bottom left, got Breaking Bad. Me personally, I've not watched Breaking Bad. I know it's kind of a stereotype about it, but I haven't watched it personally. But I'd say in your personal statement, just talk about chemistry topics that personally you find interesting, and just kind of follow the format of saying you found this thing interesting, and then this is what you did to act upon it, and this is kind of what you learned from it, and kind of explain how this has kind of motivated you to learn further at chemistry. And then after you send off your UCAS, the only thing you have is an interview, which I think, next slide. Got more. got a specific style about interview advice. So what they may ask, the interview is online, I think, for everyone. Mine personally was online on Teams. So most of my friends, speaking to most of my friends, they were asked topics that they mentioned on their personal statement. So if you put stuff on your personal statement, make sure you actually like know it. And then, but me personally, they asked me a weird question. As you can see in the top right, got a cake, not there for like no reason. Cake that says STEM Muslims. It's AI generated, so yeah, I didn't bake it. But yeah, they asked me about literally in my interview. They'll ask me, "Oh, how would you bake a cake?" Now, I wasn't prepared for this. I was thinking they were going to ask me some chemistry questions, but they literally just asked me how to bake a cake, which I guess was kind of all right. But yeah, the reason they asked this was in order to test my thinking ability and just my ability to explain things out loud, my communication, trying to understand what my thought process is like. And they did, to be fair, linking back to chemistry. I think they said like, oh, what would happen if you leave it in there for too long? Obviously, it like burn, and when it burns, it just goes straight to carbon because you remove all the hydrogen and oxygen, etc. And then they'd probably ask you about your motivation for studying chemistry. Make sure you have that sorted out. And then motivations mine wanted to study at Imperial specifically. So I think there's quite a few things. The course at Imperial chemistry course is quite practical heavy. So say that you like practicals. It doesn't have to be true, to be fair, but mentioning that you like practicals and that it's a practical heavy course, I think will help. And then obviously the academic reputation of Imperial. Maybe say you read some research articles from the professors, maybe. I didn't do this, but yeah. And then maybe you can. Well, also the department has quite a holistic learning experience through a module called iEngage, which is basically like what's it called, PSHE at high school. I don't know. I think it's the only degree course at Imperial that makes us do it. But yeah, I think mentioning that, the holistic learning experience, the department's won some awards like the Gold Athena Swan Award, which shows how good chemistry department is. And then here in the bottom, as you can see, we've got a hot plate with a petri dish on it. So that's me purifying ferrocene by sublimation. Now, ferrocene is an organometallic complex. So I guess you can mention this in your personal statement as well. It's an organometallic complex called a sandwich complex. You can search more. But basically, the thing behind it is that it's found by a guy called Jeffrey Wilkinson at Imperial. I think if you mention that in your personal statement, now they'll show, oh, this guy's really like knows what he's on about. And then I don't have a slide for this, but careers, I think careers you can go on to further study, doing a postgraduate master's, or you can do a PhD. In terms of industry, people work for like pharmaceutical companies and stuff. And then also companies like P&G, which make like fairy liquid. And then you also have maybe going to tech, finance, consulting, etc., stuff like that. So I think there's quite a variety of careers behind chemistry. Yeah, that's me. That's me done.
Thank you so much, Atshaam. Now we're going to move on to the last person, which is chemical engineering by Kowsar.
So my name is Aiza. I'm second year chemical engineering student. Okay, if you go to the next slide. What is chemical engineering? Chemical engineering is the application of chemistry, physics, maths, and engineering principles to design, optimize, and operate large-scale processes and convert raw materials into valuable products. So if you think about the fuel in the bus you take to school, from the food you eat, or even the medicine you take, chemical engineers play a crucial role in designing and optimizing the processes that make all of these products in a safe, efficient, and sustainable way. Okay, if you go to the next slide. Okay, what's unique about chemical engineering?
I'm so sorry, Kowsar, do you want to just speak a little bit louder, please?
Okay. What's unique about chemical engineering? Chemical engineering is very interdisciplinary. It combines all the physical sciences. So that's biology, maths, physics, chemistry, and engineering, which makes it a very versatile degree. So you can apply it to a vast range of industries like energy, pharma, food production, and biotechnology. Um, yeah, if you go to the next slide. In first year, it's mainly about the fundamentals of chemical engineering or engineering in general. We go through subjects like process analysis, we learn how to analyze a process, transfer processes and thermodynamics. We learn about the transfer of heat and mass, and separation processes. You learn how to separate different chemicals and compounds at a large scale. And then we also go through the fundamentals of chemistry, maths, and physics. In chemistry practice, that's made up of labs and a design project where you work within a group to solve a consulting project for a company. And yeah, it's pretty fun. If you go to the next slide, in year two, it's a lot more intense. It's a continuation of the fundamentals from year one. So you still do transfer processes, thermodynamics. Thank you. Second year, we still continue learning about the fundamentals. So transfer processes, thermodynamics, separation processes, chemistry, and maths. But the only new things we have is PDC, which is really it stands for process dynamics and control. We're learning about signals and how processes work and how signals and how to model signals. And you have reaction engineering, where you learn how uh, reactions happen at a large scale and how to find out like how to design your reactor based on the reaction kinetics and the parameters you have. And then you also have chemical practice two, which is labs again and a bit more coursework. You have business ethics, so you have to write an essay around like the ethics around business. And yeah, that's year two. If you go to the next slide, or the one after that, year three. I haven't done this yet, but it's mainly, from what I've heard, it's mainly a focus. We're focusing on chemistry applications. So you no longer use the fundamentals that you learned in your first 2 years to apply to real world problems. So you still do reaction engineering. We have new like modules called particle engineering, process optimization, safety and loss prevention, environmental engineering, and you also get an optional module this year as well. And yeah, if you go to the next one, year four, you get to choose pretty much all your modules. Some of the examples of the modules you can pick are biochemical engineering, pharmaceuticals, machine learning, applied spectroscopy, and even more. So this is the year where you get to choose what you're most interested in, what type of industry you want to go into, and you get to specialize. And yeah, if you go to the next slide. Okay, the application process. You send off your personal statement, and if they like your personal statement and you meet the entry requirements, which the minimum is 2 A stars and A. My offer was a 2 A stars and A, but I know quite a few people who got 3 A stars as an offer. And you need an A star in chem, maths, and an A in another subject. It's usually like physics, econ, biology, one of those subjects, and 40 to 42 points for IB as well. There's also an admissions test, which is mostly just maths and chemistry or physics. It's quite the questions aren't too hard. They're based on mostly like GCSE or AS level maths and physics, chemistry problems. And then the interview is quite. It's a great day. You get to. It's not just an interview. You get to explore the chemistry department, the pilot plant. You get to talk to your peers and some of the lecturers that you might have if you get in. And then during the actual interview, it's You usually get one maths question and one chemistry question, and then another question about some of your motivations, why you want to do the course, and why you want to study at Imperial. And yeah, overall it's an enjoyable experience, I would say. And yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. And that's it for me.
Okay, thank you so much to Dai, Aiza, Kowsar, Atshaam, and Osa for your time and efforts. That was very, very informative. We will now move on to the Q&A session. So if any of you do have any questions about any of the courses, any questions about Imperial or anything else you want to know, please do drop it in the chat. Don't be shy. We do have some questions that were sent in before, so we'll start with those. This is to Dai.
Yep.
What are the interviews like for material science engineering? What particular questions will I be asked, or should I expect aside from general why materials or why Imperial?
Oh, okay, that's a good question. Yeah. So what I got asked was so in my personal statement I talked about like semiconductors and things like that, or I would have brought them up, and the person that was lecturing me, or not the not my interviewer, sorry, he asked about like like what materials would go into a semiconductor, like the group 3 and 5 elements and such, or like how would you grow a silicon like crystal for the wafers and semiconductors? How is that done? Things like that. I did mention graphene a lot, but luckily he didn't really ask about that. And yeah, it was really like quite fine. And I think something important to say, I think as many others have mentioned, like it is about the thinking process as well. They want to like analyze that. So kind of speak out loud, just whatever you comes to mind, just say it out loud. I mean, it's not, don't think it's gonna be dumb or anything. Like just it might be like kind of like a problem solving situation, and yeah, that would be good. I think what else do I have to say? Do you have would that include the group interview question, like sort of thing? I don't think I'm allowed to say, but I'll say it anyway. But it would be to do with I don't know if it's the same every year, but you come they ask you like to write something about what material would be. So you know how Stone Age, Bronze Age, and all that. What is the new age like? And then you just pick something like hydrogen, carbon, perovskites, whatever, any material even, and then you have to argue, or not argue, but like discuss why is it that, why it might be something else. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Next question is a lot more general, so any of you can answer. But how is the schedule like as a Muslim at Imperial? How does it affect you and your environment, and how to do well in academia as a Muslim? If any of you want to start.
I mean,
I'll,
yeah, you go. No, you go.
yes. So life, wait, is it about like life in Imperial as a Muslim or?
Yeah.
So I think, well, the ice hockey, Alhamdulillah, is really good. It's really good. For me, in chemistry, there's a lot of Muslims as well, in my year especially, which really helps. Because obviously, being with other Muslims, relate to them, talk to them, stay on the right path together. And then in terms of timetable and like being a Muslim, I think the main kind of issue there, I guess you could say, is like praying and stuff. I think that the chemistry department is quite accommodating of that. Can't go into too much detail, finally. But yeah, you can definitely like fulfill all your prayers and stuff. You might have to miss like, I remember last year I had to miss like quite a few lectures for Jummah. You might have to like, leave the lab halfway through, which you're allowed to do just to pray. So because uni is quite like, you don't have to go to everything. You can prioritize everything, catch up later. So it's all good. Is that a good answer?
Yeah, I have the same points as Atshaam, but I would say that also like, I mean, it depends on like what building you're in, because maybe you won't be able to find as many like prayer places, any spots to pray if you can't reach the prayer room fast enough, if you're in a lab, for example. So, you know, it all depends, but alhamdulillah, it's not too bad. You know, you can always catch up to lectures and all that because they are recorded.
Yeah. Question to Kowsar and Atshaam. How theoretical is your degree and how much coding is there in your degree? Kowsar, if you want to start.
Yeah, I don't mind starting. I'd say the degree is quite theoretical. It doesn't really split off into like theoretical physics until third year, but there's a lot of maths behind it. You won't be, I don't know, out in the lab too much, especially if you compare the time you spend like working on a problem to actually inside a lab working on physics. I'd say it's a lot more on the theoretical side. That being said, there's an actual course called theoretical physics that you can choose. And yeah, which again I mentioned, you choose that in third year, but yeah, quite mathsy, quite theoretical, I'd say.
And how much coding is there in your degree?
I'd say you could maybe get away with not coding, but it makes your life a lot easier, especially with data analysis. I'd say it's only related to the labs. So if you need to produce a plot, you'd get a lot of data, you need to analyze that data. And so I'd say your time in lab, maybe like a couple hours a week, you maybe spend coding or before a final lab report and stuff like that. So not too much, and definitely something you can learn.
About so answering about chemistry, in terms of theoretical side to it, as I mentioned, I feel like the first term in year one is very theoretical because you're learning the basics behind the MOs, some molecular orbitals, and also spectroscopy, which is a lot about transitions on like electronic transitions and stuff. So it's quite theoretical, especially, I mean, depends if you what ancillary you choose, but I personally I did maths and physics, so obviously you do learn quite a bit of heavy maths in there, which I guess helps with like the main degree. But there's not too much maths though, not too much maths overall. Let me just think. It's more theoretical definitely than materials or chem eng. You do feel like you're doing a proper chemistry degree, obviously, because I know. Well, I don't want to speak for them, but yeah, there's not. It's all right. I think don't be scared by it. Is what I'd say. Don't be scared. Don't let it put you off. And then in terms of coding, I think it's similar to physics. You learn like Python in order to plot your data, be able to like fit your data, plot error bars, stuff like that. You apply, but they teach it to you like properly, so you don't have to do like any prior coding and stuff. And obviously, I feel like with ChatGPT, you can get by quite easily as well.
Okay, thank you. And another question, what kind of supercurriculars does Imperial prefer and what kind of supercurriculars did you do before applying? Anyone who wants to answer?
So the question was about supercurriculars, you said?
Yeah.
I don't think I had to do any that I would have had to throw on the personal statement, for example. Usually everything that you have to do at school is enough. If you're interested in the topic, you'll usually know more about it if you want to look into it more. Because Imperial doesn't really care. It cares more about how much you care about the topic than like how good you are at sports, I would say. Or like chess or something. Yeah, I didn't mean to like, someone else can take the mic as well. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You wanna?
Yeah, I'd say, yeah, go on.
You go.
I'd say Imperial tend to like anything that makes you unique. So you don't really need a super curricular, but anything that makes you unique does help, I'd say. And for something that I did, I just learned languages on the side. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A couple of questions from the chat. For Aiza, for geology, how was it traveling with students as a Muslim girl? Would you be able to talk a little bit more about your experience on your field trips?
So because I'm a first year, and the main trip that we do, which is 10 days in Spain, that's in June. So I haven't been on that one yet, but I have been on one of the day trips. So I'm not sure too much about how they plan like the dorm arrangements and everything. But from the schedule that we've had previously, they build in a lot of breaks. So it should be okay finding time to pray during the trip at least. And I'm quite sure they have like gendered dorm situation. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah, I hope so.
And another question, do they care a lot more about your maths grade over your science ones, like engineering? I'm guessing that's a question for Osa and Dai to answer.
Sorry. So that it will say on the website that the requirements that you get at least get an A in math or an A in chemistry and physics and such. I don't think they care like a lot about whether it's maths or like science or any of that, as long as you get the minimum grades or whatever offer you get. I mean that's pretty much it. Is that what the question was, or is that like an engineering, as in like engineering course? I don't think there's an A level for that. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think that was
Oh,
fine.
yeah, biology is, well, yeah, for materials, biology is yeah, is a course that you can have. It's one of the other, it falls under that on the website. Yeah, you just have to at least have physics and maths or sorry, maths and physics or chemistry. But I don't know about the other courses. It was on the slides. I forgot.
Okay. More general to everyone, how do you battle with imposter syndrome as a student at Imperial? Who else is still here?
I don't like grabbing the mic so much, but I feel like I have to volunteer. So I did feel like I don't know if I experienced imposter syndrome as much. So if anyone else has, but I feel like you do see that like, oh my God, everyone else is smart as well, because you all got into, or everyone's smart, whether you get into Imperial or not. But it's you shouldn't compare your grade with others. I feel like it should be more of a self-improvement thing. And if you got into Imperial, then you deserve to be here. So just do your best. I don't know if this is good advice. Um, but yeah, I feel like it, uh, you know, just okay. Hmm. That's all
Does
I have to
anyone else
say.
have anything to
That's
add
a tough
about
question.
imposter
That's a
syndrome?
tough question.
I think with him,
I could add something, I think.
Yes, go
Do you
ahead,
want to go
Yasin.
first, Atshaam? Okay.
go
Well,
on.
if you do get in, right, you're paying £9,000 a year anyway. So think about the university as like a service. You're already paying for it. You're the one who's paying for it, rather than you needing to be deserving of being there. If you get what I mean.
That's a great answer, Yasin. I don't have anything further to add.
Okay, final question. This is from Madiha to Atshaam. What did you answer when they asked you how to bake a cake?
So I just standard procedure. So you get the eggs. Yeah, standard procedure, innit? Do you want me to answer it right now, or
Yeah.
so I'll say? I don't remember exactly, innit? This is all I remember from my interview is them asking me how to bake a cake and also why Imperial. But yeah, so how to bake a cake, get your eggs, get your flour, you follow a recipe. I remember I said that you follow a recipe book and the specified amounts, put them in the bowl, mix it up. Then you put it in the oven for a set number of time. And then they asked me for like how long. And then I was like 20 minutes. And that's where they kind of were like, oh, what would happen if you left it in too long? And then they linked it to chemistry kind of thing, which is good. Also, I want to mention one thing. I didn't mention this. If you want to have a look, like for chemistry, if you want to have a look at the modules in like all 4 of the years in more detail, there's one website called Chem Unity. It's quite good. Has everything on there. So yeah, check that out.
Okay. I think that's all the questions. Thank you so much to our 5 lovely volunteers for your time and efforts, and thank you to everyone who joined. We hope you learned something and feel somewhat more confident in deciding what you want to study and making your application to university. If you do want to ask us any further questions, if the volunteers want, you can drop your email address or LinkedIn or whatever in the chat, and you can message them or email them if you have any further questions and you're maybe too shy to ask. Other than that, follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn to keep up to date with what we do, and the recording for this will be available as well at some point. And yeah, thank you so much all for joining.